Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, December 14, 2015. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Martin, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Lennon.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Piana. Here. And Mayor Coulter.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum this evening. Next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
I probably should have jumped in quicker, but I would like to add a presentation to the agenda that we'll do at the beginning, and we'll, since Mr. Lennon has a few family and friends in the audience, we'll talk about him a little bit as our first presentation, if that's okay.
And I would move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
All right. Any discussion? Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, Councilmembers Martin.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. Which leads us to our first presentation. Mr. Lennon, Councilman.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, this is Mike's last meeting as a council member in Ferndale. After 3 terms, 12 years here on council.
Yes. Yes.
A number of years on the police force. I know it's 37 years combined, right?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah, wow.
It's been grand.
Yeah?
It really is.
You also follow your dad and your brother up
Right.
here on council?
I do.
And continuing the great Lennon tradition.
Well, but always taught to give back, and that's what I try to do.
And you have. So let me start by reading a resolution that we have for you.
Very well.
All right? And it goes like this. The City of Ferndale proclamation honoring Michael Lennon for his service as a member of City Council. I, David Coulter, on behalf of the Ferndale City Council, extends the city's appreciation to Michael Lennon for his dedicated service to the City of Ferndale as a member of the City Council from 2004 to 2015. Michael Lennon served the city as a dedicated Ferndale police officer for 25 years and then carried on his family's legacy of service to the community during his 3 terms on City Council. His commitment is evident in the effort he put forth to understand the complex issues facing the city and making educated decisions as a conscientious guardian of the city's resources. His legacy will be as a hardworking steward for the residents of Ferndale. Michael Lennon is a credit to this community, and it is with heartfelt appreciation that we celebrate his achievement and thank him for 12 years of dedicated service as a member of the Ferndale City Council. So that's the first thing we'd like to give you.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
We have a couple of other things we'd like to give you as well, all right? We have April, you want to
You want
get
my
the
account number?
first one? Yeah.
Routing number?
A couple other just little tokens of our appreciation, Michael, that we hope you like.
Okay.
We'll see. April's going to get it out of the back there.
I can only imagine.
Let's see. Oh, well, we know that you're a Notre Dame fan, right?
Oh, wow.
And we know that you've served the city for 37 years. So what more?
37.
37 years. Notre Dame. It's killing me as a Spartan fan, but to buy that. But Mike's a Notre Dame fan. And then one more thing for you. You know, while you're watching the Fighting Irish, while you're sitting at home watching the football games and the basketball games, we got something we thought you might appreciate. Now, the joke behind this is Mike's been crabbing for new seats for 5 years, but we didn't get him until his last meeting.
How long is yours?
So
Go ahead.
you can have one of the original ones, Mike. That's all yours, man.
Nice touch. I kind of had a thought. Yes. I'll come and get it.
Got your name on it. You're good.
Okay. I had a feeling.
I'll give your colleagues an opportunity if they'd like to say a few words if anyone on council would like to
I would love
chime
to. I'll
in.
start. It's 4.5 years ago I decided to run for city council, and I got the privilege to run with Mike, which was just a great time and really supportive, and I couldn't have asked for a more supportive colleague. And when we got elected, was right there in lockstep to help me on board and get used to the craziness that this can be. And I can't thank you enough, and I've enjoyed working with you. I think you've brought a voice of common sense to this council, and I'm really going to miss you. So I wish you well.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep. Thanks.
Well, when I first ran in 2009, you were a huge supporter of mine, and you continued that support when I ran again in 13. I'm so appreciative, and it has really been truly my honor and pleasure to work with you.
Thanks, Greg.
And when I ran in 2009, I don't think you knew who the hell I was.
I did. And he probably told you.
He told me. I think our relationship has always been wonderful, and I've really appreciated your perspective and point of view, particularly in our first 2 years together on council, where we had to make some really tough decisions about the police department and the fire department. And just knowing that you were the sort of the touchstone in those areas were really helpful, and really appreciated your point of view and your jokes and your humor and your no nonsense. And so please go off, do things that you normally wouldn't do, discover new things, and I guess don't think of us.
I
all
get to
the
watch
time.
Monday Night Football now.
We're gonna pipe in our meetings over your football.
Oh, thank you, Melanie.
Have a great time.
I will. Thank you.
What some people don't know is that sometimes Mike and I pass scores back and forth.
yeah.
Monday Night Football or
Oh,
the
yeah.
Tigers or
Tigers,
something.
yeah.
Mike, there's a lot of things I'm going to miss about you, man. It's not going to be the same without you here. I said it earlier, but you're just kind of a no nonsense, tell it like it is guy, and I've always appreciated you. I love you, man, and good luck to you. All right.
You're quite a friend.
Thanks, Mike. Now, I think there's also probably some people here in the audience that might want to say a word or two, and if that, we'll skip the normal protocol of waiting for a call to audience if you want to come up and say anything at all. And I see our state rep, and I know that he has something for you as well, Michael. So maybe
Rep. Wittenberg?
We'll start with Representative Wittenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And Mike, I did bring a tribute here with a seal from the State House of Representatives. So I think my father knows your family
Yes, he does.
quite well. My
Yes, he
dad
does.
actually knows your father, and they were politically active years and years ago. And I think they actually ran against, I think they both ran for state representative here.
That is true. That was the one
And
Dana Wilson won. That.
That's right, and I know they were both unsuccessful, but it's worked out for both of us, though. So we figured out what they did wrong, and then we, so no, I want to thank you for everything you've done as I've come to know you throughout the last few years, and then obviously reading about all the things that you've done for the city of Ferndale. Just really, really want to thank you. I won't read the whole tribute,
Sure.
And I'll give this to you, but I think the last paragraph here is really nice, and I'll read that for you. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to join with the citizens of Ferndale in saluting Councilmember Michael Lennon in acknowledgement and in gratefulness for his many dedicated years in public service. May he know our admiration and warmest wishes for happiness and health in the years ahead. I want to thank you and present this to you, and wish you all the best.
Uh-oh, I see the police chief making his way up. His former boss.
Oh boy, here it goes.
All right. Other than his mom and his family, I have to say that I'm the one person in the room that has known Mike the longest. Mike and I went to the police academy back in 1979. We were academy mates. Believe it or not, there's the man that beat everybody else in the mile-and-a-half run in our academy class.
It's true.
That's a true story. A true story. And then, as soon as he got done, he sat down and started smoking Marlboros. It was incredibly awesome. Mike and I worked together as patrolmen. I worked for Mike's entire career with him. I tried to talk him out of retiring. He wouldn't have any part of it. And then he came out on the council, and he was a voice for the police department. That every day that we appreciate Mike, and we still do. The men and women of the police department wish you well with you and yours, and we hope that you live a long life, buddy.
Thanks, Chief. Jimmy. I'd just like to say that in 2003, when I got a call from a former chief of police, Mike Kitchen, says, "You're running." I says, I planned on it, but not, I just retired. No. He says, "You're running. I'm getting your petitions and you're running." I says, "Petition's got to be in 2 weeks." He says, "I'll get the signatures." So here I am, 12 years later. The police career was a very rewarding career. This has been a passion. This has been a real passion. It's very, very bittersweet for me to be leaving. But, you know, time passes me by. And I have the utmost confidence in everybody sitting at this table right now to guide the city, into the future. Very intelligent and knowledgeable people up here. I've worked with 3 great mayors, several different council people, a couple police chiefs, chief of police, 3 fire chiefs. City managers, several city managers. We finally got it right, April.
Oh, thank you.
It took us a while.
Oh, it's okay.
But no, everybody's been fantastic. The volunteers of this community, it's just unbelievable. We couldn't proceed any further with all these boards and commissions that we have without the volunteers. And there's one great event. Everybody's always asking me, well, what's happening in Ferndale this weekend? What's happening in Ferndale this weekend? Just one great event after the other. And you haven't heard the last of me. I'm going to be volunteering at a few things. I want to thank my sister Lori, my mom, my lady Sue, and my brother Ed for coming.
Yeah. Great to see you.
My son is in Guam. He can't be here. My daughter's in retail, Shop Carhartt, so she can't be here. And I said, you haven't heard the last of me. However, though, I'm going to have to say that Ferndale Forum is going to have to kick me off right now because I don't have to be PC anymore and I can respond. Dave and I will text it. I say, did you read that on Ferndale Forum? And I'll text him. He goes, unbelievable. And I'll say, I want to respond. He goes, don't.
Don't get me in trouble. I'm still here.
Yeah, that's right. But Saturday I had to go see some doctors, and I have got walking pneumonia. And I will be leaving this meeting shortly. I'm sitting up here sweating and getting my colleagues sick. But Ferndale, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting me serve. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jill, we finally got it right. We finally got it right. You guys are fantastic. Our DPW is just phenomenal. Our police and fire departments, staff here at City Hall, all the workers are just so dedicated and committed. Thank you. I've said enough.
As much as you said all year.
Yeah, it has.
You like that jersey, by the way?
I do. I love it. Man, that's going to be on during the Ohio State game.
All right.
Another forum just for yourself. And some others,
I should.
All right. So Mike isn't kidding. He really isn't feeling well. He dragged himself out of his sick bed to be here tonight. So if he leaves, we excuse you and pardon you, Mike. Thanks for making it.
Let's just swear Ray Long in and have her come sit here.
I'm telling you, we're ready.
I'm still your council person to December 31st. You still get a hold of me.
All right. All right. Well, I don't know how they top it, but the Ferndale Community Foundation is our next presentation. And Dan, you're going to introduce that.
I'd be happy to. The Ferndale Community Foundation is an organization, a local nonprofit that does a number of things, and particularly give out grants to nonprofits. But we also have the privilege of being the fiduciary to a number of organizations, including Ferndale Pride. And I'd like to invite Julia Music up to say a few words, and then we have some grant awards from the proceeds of Ferndale Pride to distribute to some other worthy local nonprofits. Julia?
This is the new location, I take it?
Perfect. Yep.
Hi, good evening. It's nice to see all of you tonight, and it's always nice to see people when I get to give away money. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to Ferndale Pride's volunteers, because we are, aside from me, an all-volunteer crew. There was about 11 of us last year on our home team that organized about 100 volunteers of the Day of Pride, and they are here tonight. So if you guys can stand up, please, the crew from last year. And Phoenix, who will never stand up. One thing we dedicated, when we set up Pride, one of our main focuses was to keep Pride a free event to everybody who comes into the city, and to give money back to organizations in our community. So tonight we're going to give back money to 4 organizations. Do you want to just do this tandem?
Yeah, just
okay.
Call them up.
Okay, so the first organization that we're giving money back to is Affirmation. Affirmations, is Susan here? Hi, Susan. We haven't met yet. So Affirmations is the largest GLBTQA community center in the state of Michigan. I feel awkward because I'm looking at you, but don't sideways. Come on up. And we use your center as one of our meeting locations, and so we would like to give back with a grant to Affirmations. Thank you. Nice to meet you. And then, Monica, are you accepting for MAC tonight? Okay. Michigan AIDS Coalition is an organization that's been around in the city for as long as I can remember. They actually were the first people to train me in volunteering. So thank you very much for all your hard work. And she coordinates our volunteers for us. The next grant goes to Transgender Michigan. Rachel and Susan have been representing the trans community. I met them at my first Pride when I was 16 years old, so 20 years we've known each other. And they've been doing some great work getting gender to the forefront of our community and really helping people understand what gender is all about. So thank you for both. And there is a last check, but we don't really write it because it goes back to Community Foundation. And for those of you who don't know what Community Foundation does is they grant out mini grants to different organizations who want to start projects in the city of Ferndale. And they've done some amazing work over the years, anti-bullying projects at the school. One of the C grants that you gave was for the Ferndale Free Clinic. So the money actually stays in our city and creates all sorts of new projects. So if you would like to apply for a grant, I encourage you to go online to ferndaleCommunityFoundation.org, correct, Phoenix?
Correct.
.org? Yeah, that's correct. Okay. And apply for a grant because your next idea could be the next big thing in Ferndale. So thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia, for all your work. Great job. Yeah.
Just to close it out, I want to publicly thank Julia Music. She's took over from Craig Covey as director for Pride and putting the event together, and it's just gotten better and better and better every year under her leadership. So as a community, I don't think we can thank you enough for what you've done in evolving the event, the recognition, and the good that this cause does. So thank you.
All right, our next presentation is the Ferndale Public Schools. I didn't actually, Raylan's going to, for your last duty as a school board member, of course.
That's right.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Council, Mayor.
Good evening.
I would first like to start off by saying that the Ferndale Public Schools, there's a lot of good things happening in the schools. And I want you to know that our public schools have been placed on the College Board's 6th annual AP District Honor Roll, which is pretty thrilling because we have a lot of AP courses in the district, and our students benefit from that. 425 schools in the U.S. and in Canada were nominated for this, and we got it. I also want to go on to some music news. 4 Ferndale students were selected to the All-State Band and Orchestra. Their names are as follows: David Trains, viola, 4th year in a row. Benjamin Ceramon, I believe I said, flute, 2nd year in a row. Isabella Kokorian, clarinet, 2nd year. and Lucas Langley, the only 8th grader, viola. So congratulations. It was 2,000 that came out for auditions, and 200 students were selected statewide. So congratulations to them. Our university high school students presented at the state capitol on December 4th, and their purpose was to demonstrate how technology is used, technology is used for public service announcements with the objective of raising public awareness. Our university high school students also got a chance to meet our state representative, Robert Wittenberg, who's in the audience, and also Senator Vincent Gregory. Let's see. We have a lot of things going on in Ferndale schools, but I'm going to keep this short. We have an organization called the Ferndale Education Foundation, and we're looking for volunteers. If you've not heard about that, the Ferndale Education Foundation makes it possible for a variety of learning opportunities for our students, Camp Skyline, mini grants for our teachers, many opportunities, tutoring, scholarships, visiting authors. So if you would like to be involved in that, I know we have a lot of volunteerism here in this community, and we can always use you. So I encourage you to go to ferndaleschools.org to find out more about that and all the wonderful things that we have going on in our schools. I would also like to say thank you to all of you who have supported Ferndale Schools. This will be my last presentation as a Ferndale School Board member, and I just really appreciate all the support you've given us over the years. And I'm sorry that Mr. Lennon had to leave, because I wanted to personally thank him for all of his years of service and all that his family and that he's given to this community. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
And maybe one last thing is, there's an opening on the school board, I understand.
Absolutely. There is an opening. I forgot about that. Yes, and actually there's an online application on ferndaleschools.org if you know someone who's interested in being involved in the school board process and continuing all the great work that's going on. So the deadline for the application is December 21st, 4 o'clock. And then also, if you're interested, please seek me out. I could be a great resource for you. So, thank you.
Thanks, Phelan. Great, thanks. All right, our next presentation is our Ferndale Area District Library. Good evening. Good to see you.
Hello. Hello, Council.
Hello.
So we have a presentation. I don't think I can access it myself from here, can I?
Let's see if we can. Oh.
I think so.
Should be. Give us
If
a
not, I
minute
can
to-
do it completely from memory and describe each slide in detail.
If you could pantomime it, that would be great.
Then everyone's going to watch these things on
Yes.
Channel 3.
We'll give them just a minute to see if we can find it. Because your presentations are always graphically the nicest ones we see.
Sorry, Joe.
Sorry. Nope, maybe not.
Actually, there was like the 4th or 5th one down.
I think that was last month.
Oh, we might not have this loaded.
All right.
The
I'll-
PowerPoint, Joe.
Pretty pictures will be missing, but they are available on the library's webpage. So.
Do you need the hard copy to work from?
No, we can all gather around my iPhone and we can look at it too.
Sorry about that. I
That's
apologize.
it's no problem. Is that? No, this maybe is it. That's it. We found
Ta-da! There we go.
All right. Oh, it's in a PDF. Huh. Okay. All right. Well, we can still use it. So upcoming events, this Saturday, you can build your own gingerbread house. This is a free event. The materials will be supplied. It's at 12:30. Do call ahead just to make sure we have space for you. I've heard that we won't turn anyone away, but we do want to make sure we have enough materials. And, young children, they're welcome to come. Just be aware that they need a little help. Don't just abandon them to their own demise, because they'll do exactly what my 2-year-old does and just, create a big pile of smashed cookies and frosting. And it's delicious, but, he wants to look like that, right? There is Ferndale has a the Ferndale Area District Library has a teen advisory council, and this is an opportunity for kids to get involved and actually decide the library programming. This is really important for kids that, are thinking a little bit ahead and are thinking about, geez, what'll look good on my resume and how do I get involved in the community? This is a nice little program to do it. So we encourage, teenagers to come and join. It'll get them interacting with other teens in the community, and there'll be food. And hooray!
Saw that. Hooray!
It's down there. So. And for the adults, they're hosting Coloring and Cocoa. This is in January, so a little ahead, but some people take off for the holiday, and we wanted to get it out front as soon as we could. So on Wednesday, January 13th in the evening, adults 18 and over are invited to drop in. There'll be coloring materials, and there'll also be a hot chocolate bar. You're welcome to bring your own materials if you'd like, if you have anything especially creative in mind. But you don't have to be super creative. You just come in and draw what you feel. And that's it.
That sounds
Thank
fun.
you, Ferndale. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And last but not least, our Downtown Development Authority has lots of stuff going on, and Barry Hicks is here to tell us about it.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I think we also have a PowerPoint too, but it's just some photos that are going to scroll by from the Holiday Ice Festival. There they are.
Yes. The all
Because these would be really hard for me to describe. I describe them as children screaming in Santa's lap. So those are in there for you, Jackie.
That's a good-looking Santa.
That really is.
So we're just going to watch this, right? I don't have to. No, I wanted to say some thank yous for the Holiday Ice Festival that happened this past Saturday. Jerome Raska, Nicole Jellycass, Yvette Buselli, Ink Addicts, Jim Doyen, John Sipple, Alex Nash, Brandon Conlin, Rick Axe, Summer Reilly, Joe Reilly, Tim O'Rear, Jackie Smith, Michael Hennis, Kevin Kranz, Nick Zimbardi, and forgive me if I slaughter some of these, Sandy Rapullo, Diana Schreiber, Betty Jones, the Wilcox, Joanne, Richard, and Donna, the Ferndale Rotary, Mark Loeb, Mark Burton, Jeannie Davis, and Danny of the Ferndale Arts and Cultural Commission, Larry Saval at the Michigan Fallen Group, Ferndale DPW, and as well as the Ferndale Fire Department, the Ferndale Police. The 48 businesses that sponsored ice sculptures this year sponsors Giffords Webster Engineering and Credit Union 1, Rosie O'Grady's for hosting lunch with Santa, Bloom's for the use of their van to transport Santa's chair, the Ferndale Recreation Department for the use of Santa's chair, and of course Santa and Mrs. Claus. The over 800 photos. So,
what was Santa saying? Oh, there's the.
See, George is crying too.
Those are great.
But yes, all the people that enjoyed and came out enjoyed the hayride and everything. And also, I wanted to say a special thank you. Before I came on board here, Cindy Wilcox was already in the planning on doing events like this in the Holiday Hoof recently, and I think she's done a fantastic job pulling all this off. So a special thanks to her too. And I'm going to try to get through these, but there might still be funny photos in there, so bear with me. Next, I'd like to invite those late night shoppers to come to downtown this Thursday, December 17th, for Merry Moonlight Madness. We'll have several retailers running specials and have later hours to accommodate people that may have late night shopping needs. And also, I'd like to welcome a couple of new businesses to town. First, Joel and Daniel Kahn. They recently opened Green Space Cafe, located at 215 West 9 Mile. It features a vegan menu, a full bar, and cold-pressed juices from Drought. Also, I would like to welcome Gwen Beckley and her team at Maurice London Wardrobe, which features fine women's clothing and accessories. Maurice London opened on Small Business Saturday at 171 West 9 Mile, so go on down and check them out. And then also, I'd like to wish everybody a safe and happy holiday and Happy New Year.
Thanks. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it. Thanks for the pictures, too. That was fun. All right. Next item of business then would be called to audience, and this is your opportunity for those of you who are with us here live to come on up and speak to council on any issue that you'd like that's not on the agenda, because you can speak to that if you so choose when we get there. So come on up, anyone in the audience that would like to address council tonight. Give us your name and your address, and 3 minutes are yours.
Let me leave that
Oh.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Sharon Schass, and I'm here representing the Ferndale Community Concert Band. And let me thank you for coming and attending our holiday concert yesterday. Now you have proof that we are as amazing as I keep saying we are. And our Santa was very well received yesterday. He had a very busy weekend. And I appreciate his effort in acknowledging how good we are. What I'd like to ask is, a couple of years ago, the City Council reappointed the Arts Commission. And Francine and Jeannie have done a wonderful job on bringing that commission and the community together with what the community recognized as their need for arts. And through that, of course, the band is kind of a spinoff of that. What I'm finding, though, now is because the commission has done such a wonderful job on identifying their art programs and the needs, we are basically kind of fighting for the same dollars with grants. And so my ask of the city is to create a department called Office of Cultural Affairs. So where an arts commission, such as ourselves, could be run under one umbrella. Minneapolis is having great success at doing this. They established it in 2001. And what this allows us to do is to bring the grant money under one umbrella, and we all get a little part of that. We still work as volunteers underneath that department within the city. But in my opinion, with the support of our businesses, such as Gage Products, Chris and Krista Johnson with the three businesses there, Dean Martin, Brian Kramer, or Dean Bach, Dean Martin. I just watched the Frank Sinatra thing. You know? Excuse me. But in the DDA, when they identified Art Town, okay, we recognize that we have an incredibly talented community on all levels of art. Our high school has an incredible music and art program, which will always fund our need for quality art. It's all over the city now exhibited, and the parents and the families and the community are very proud of what we have. So we have a continual funneling of art into the programs that we're currently establishing. So my long-term plan is to see the corner of Pinecrest and 8 Mile created and developed into the Center for the Arts of Ferndale, and where we have a place that our acting guilds that are currently already established here in Ferndale, our band, our arts that come from University, Wayne State, Detroit, Michigan, or University of Mercy, Detroit Mercy. We're right here where all of these art programs are funneling into Ferndale, and we could be the community for not only fun things to do, special events, but for the arts and for businesses to come in. So I just think that the city now, you've established where our downtown needs to be, where our economics need to be. Now let's establish where the arts need to be. And I'm looking to the city to now buy into a project that the community and the volunteers have proven can grow and can support itself. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
and
Sharon.
have a great holiday.
You too. Great concert yesterday. Anyone else that would like to address council this evening? Sure. Yeah.
Hello again. Robert Wittenberg from Oak Park, visiting you guys tonight. So just want to come say hello and give you a brief update on some of the things happening in Lansing. And remind me, I know there's 7 different communities that I try to get to every meeting as often as I can. Did we talk about, I know it's been a month or so now, but the roads proposal?
Nope. Not last time you were here.
Okay. All right. So I'll do a brief run through on that. And I voted against the proposal. It was a mostly partisan. There was only one Democrat who seems to side with the other side who voted for it, but otherwise it was a Republican-led proposal to supposedly fix our roads. However, it doesn't get fully implemented until 2021, and myself included, there won't be a single House member still serving after 2020. So it's, you know, the epitome of kicking the can down the road. Again, it won't be fully implemented until 2021. They're also ultimately going to take $800 million out of the general fund, which is just financially irresponsible. And that's something that even the governor, before the deal went through, the governor and some organizations like the Detroit Chamber of Commerce and some other organizations were saying that anything more than $400 million out of the general fund would be fiscally irresponsible. And unfortunately, ultimately, it could be $800 million that could come from our local communities, that could come from community mental health, that could come from our schools. So wasn't a good plan. Again, they didn't really consult us to try to come up with the plan, and I wish it could have been a bipartisan solution because I think we would have worked together to get a long-term fix. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Most recently, if people were following, it hasn't been signed by the governor yet, but the Senate and the House voted to eliminate straight ticket voting, which to me was just purely political. It wasn't anything based, you know, for trying to help with a policy initiative here in Michigan. The main reason they said is they want all voters to be able to evaluate every candidate, and they can already do that. You absolutely are allowed to evaluate every candidate. You don't have to vote straight ticket. It's just another option. And so, you know, a lot of times we've been talking about the Republicans trying to suppress the vote, and that's something I truly believe. Even in committee, they were talking about the wait time at, you know, precincts around the state, and obviously in urban areas it's a lot longer. There were some members of the committee who were saying that they don't have to wait at all, but they live in rural areas, and we have studies that show that it's an average of 22 minutes or wait time. So that means if they're waiting 0 minutes, then someone else is waiting 44 minutes minimum. And so I don't see this again as something that we really, really needed to do. It was, in my mind, it was a solution in search of a problem. Is that the way you can phrase it? And so again, this was a solely partisan issue. This one was completely partisan. And there were some of my colleagues got up and had some really impassioned speeches about it. So another thing to be mindful of that might be coming through is they're trying to change the date of when the county executive is elected here in Oakland County. Again, purely political. Because the county, the executive is elected in presidential years, they want to move it to the gubernatorial years where less people show up. And they said their reasoning for that is that they want it to be consistent with the other elections, the counties surrounding us. So we actually have a bill that would change all elections to be on presidential years. So if they really want to be consistent, then we should be consistent, and we should do it when the most voters turn out. When, you know, that's the whole thing. We want more people engaged in the process. We want more people to vote. So why not have some of these meaningful elections when all the voters or most of the voters are getting out to the polls? So if they try to say that they just want to do this to be in line with their counties, then obviously we can fire back and say, fine, then let's do it everything in the presidential year. And
by the way, if that were to pass, Brooks is up next year, right?
Correct. So what they want to do is it would be a 2-year, so it would be 2016, he'd run again in 2018, and then it would be 4 years after that. So 2018, 2022.
Run for a 2-year term.
It would be a 2-year term, and then every 4 years after that, so that it would be during the gubernatorial elections.
If I may, just to clarify.
Sure.
So he'd run for a 2-year term, or they just extend him 2 years?
He'd run for it. He has to run again in 2016.
Okay, thank you.
And he already mentioned that he is going to run again in 2016. But he would then, it would be for a 2-year term. If this goes through, it would be a 2-year term. And then starting 2018, they would run. And, you know, if it was Brooks or if it was a successor that was running. Also, some people at home might be getting, I know I've received some information. There's energy bills that are going through. And to be honest with you, the bills keep evolving and changing every day. So I haven't taken a position on it. I know there's a lot of things that I don't like about the bills, but I encourage people, if you're getting the literature and if you have questions or thoughts or concerns, please reach out to me and let me know. Again, I want to vote based on what the people of the district want. And so I encourage people to reach out if they have questions, suggestions, concerns, anything specifically with the energy package. So that's something that could happen this week. I don't know that that's going to be the case. It might be something that's pushed till next year. So that's just a little update on what's going on. Again, I encourage everyone. I always tell everyone here and everyone at home, and as always, I'll give my phone number, my email. If there's ever anything we can do to help, any questions, suggestions, anything, please feel free to reach out. Again, the phone number is 517-373-0478, and email is robertwittenberg@house.mi.gov. So that's the best way to reach me. And I'm usually out and about in the community as well. I know most of you last night at the menorah lighting here, which was a really nice event. And a happy belated Hanukkah to everyone that celebrated, and a happy holidays to everyone coming up, and a happy New Year. And if you have any questions or anything specific, I'd be happy to answer.
I texted you today about a House bill. The Michigan Municipal League sent out a urgent vote no on House Bill 5016, and it's about a bill that would require municipalities to reimburse telecommunications provider a portion of relocation costs if a community fails to notify the provider at least 1 year in advance of a project that will require relocation of their lines. Basically, it's setting up cities to be responsible to pay for private for-profit companies from moving their telecommunications lines in the public right-of-way. And they think that if it passes, it will just sort of be a slippery slope to gas and electric companies. And so I texted our representative today and told him to vote no. I'm on a texting basis. So I appreciate
you
that.
absolutely. Any way, smoke signals, however you want to get a hold of me, you send it out. That was the first time I've seen that. So, obviously there's a lot of bills that are introduced in Lansing. I always read the bills that come through the committees that I'm on, and then I read the bills that I'm going to be voting on the House floor. I don't always read everything because a lot of them don't even make it to our desk. So that was the first time that I've heard about that. So, but yeah, it's not surprising to me that they're trying to, do something again to kind of screw our local municipalities. Unfortunately, that's been what's going on for quite some time. The state balancing their budget on the backs of our schools and our local communities. And that's been a problem for quite some time, and something that I really would like to address. But we have to, taking off my hat as an elected, as nonpartisan, on the partisan side, we really need to vote in people that believe, that share the values that we have. That we need to fund our local communities and we need to fund our schools properly and not take that money for big corporations and the wealthy, and again, balancing the budgets of the state on the backs of our middle and lower income families, schools, communities, like I said. So 2016 is an important year. So,
excellent. But
yeah, if there's any other issues, any of you and people at home, obviously reach out to me, and I'm happy to obviously hear what you have to say, and I'll, obviously want to know how people feel on the issues and what's important to them when I vote. Because, again, I can't be an expert on every issue, and I like to hear what people have to say. And it really does make an impact on how I vote on some issues, because it'll be something where I'm not familiar with the subject, and so I read up and try to do my homework on it, and then it helps to have constituents and residents here reach out to me and give me their thoughts and concerns.
Then we will.
So,
and thank you as always for coming by.
That. Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for
Great
having
to see
me.
you.
Happy
Thank
holidays
you.
to everyone.
All right. Anyone else like to address council? Good evening.
Good evening, Your Honor, City Council members. My original motivation for coming out tonight was to simply give a thumbs up and a thanks to the DPW for the great job they do with the leave all those leaves every year, including this year. But I have a bigger thanks to give to the Ferndale Police Department and the fire and rescue first responders. I mean, some of you probably heard my wife and I and band members were victims of an attempted home invasion robbery. We managed to get them out, but when I managed to get that 911, boom, Ferndale Police were right there. It made me really feel like somebody outside of my circle of family and friends cares, you know. So a salute of the highest order to the Ferndale Police and the fire responders.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
saying
you
that,
very
and I'm
much.
glad you're okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless someone from council removes a consent agenda item. Let me read that agenda now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held November 23rd, 2015. Item B is the approval of the 2016 city meeting calendar. Item C is the approval of the Woodward Corridor Bicycle Cost Sharing Agreement as part of the 2016 Transportation Alternative Grant Award requirement. Item D is the approval of the Allied proposal of $9,290 to perform the parking office build-out at City Hall, lower level, and that the DPW director be authorized to sign the proposal, expense to be charged to the auto parking fund. Item E is the approval of the Davie Resource Group proposal of $55,768 to perform the public tree inventory and urban tree canopy assessment, and that the DPW director be authorized to sign the authorization letter contingent upon our city attorney's approval of the insurance, and that expense to be charged to the general fund contractual services. Item F is the approval of purchase and installation of a Middle Atlantic L5 lectern from Videotape Productions for a cost of $3,480 to be withdrawn from the account noted in the agenda. Item G is the approval of purchase and installation of the Avigilon Security Solution. I'm probably butchering that. Avigilon Security Solutions by DA Central in the amount of $17,555, from the account noted in the agenda. And finally, the approval of the bills and payroll is submitted by the city manager's office, subject to the review of the council finance committee. What is the council's pleasure on the consent agenda?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
I would like to make one modification if I could. If you look at item B, which is the approval of the 2016 city meeting calendar, what we have typically done, especially in December when one of the meetings conflicts with Christmas, is we've combined two meetings into one date. And we didn't do that on here, but I think we should go ahead and do that now so that the members of the public and others have plenty of notice time. And so on this calendar, it says Monday, December 12th and Tuesday, December 27th. But I would propose that we would combine the two meetings as we've done tonight on Monday, December 19th.
I support that.
All right.
Seems like we do it anyway.
We do, and so this way we would just give folks plenty of notice of that. So if that's okay with the original motion maker. Okay, excellent. So I'm sorry, it was moved by whom?
And supported by myself, so
supported
yes,
by Pollock, and you're both
support that
supportive of
amendment.
Okay. Any other discussions or comments on the consent agenda from the public or council? All right. If not,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Well, I just want to express my my delight and looking forward to the tree inventory study. We've talked about it for a number of years, and I hope we get a lot. I'm sure we're going to get a lot out of it.
I agree.
I know it's a very costly item, but I think it's something that's going to benefit our community down the road.
Indeed. All right, other comments or questions? Marnie, would you call the roll on the consent agenda, please?
Councilmembers Polika,
Yes.
Piana. Yes. Martin.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Moving on to the regular agenda, item A is a confirmation to appoint Amanda Hanlon to the Provisional Library Board for the Ferndale Area District Library. And Is that you? You want to come up? Maybe Jessica, I don't know if you want to introduce her.
Hi, this is Amanda Hanlon. We're very pleased that she stepped up and volunteered to be appointed in the opening on our library board that was created when Patrick Dengate resigned. Amanda has been serving on our Building and Finance Committee as a member of the public for 2 years now? About a year, okay. But she's been a wonderful resource, very, very smart, very dedicated, and very passionate about the library. So we are thrilled to have her officially join our board.
Awesome. And Amanda, is there anything you would like to add or say?
Just to thank the other members of the board for the nomination and the opportunity. I've been a resident of Ferndale for 12 years and a library patron for many years. My family frequents the library at least weekly, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do something for the library in return.
Thank you. We're grateful for your willingness to serve as well. All right. A motion would be in order. Don't fight over it.
I'd move to confirm to appoint Amanda. It's not you, believe me. I was waiting for the document to come out.
Wow, I thought it was.
I move to confirm the appointment of Amanda Hanlon to the Provisional Library Board for the Ferndale Area District Library.
Amanda's sweating over there.
It's knocking. I'm waiting.
Would you? Is there support? Okay. Is there? Okay. It's been moved. It's been moved and supported. Any comments or questions?
I just have a question. Once the library board for the district library is no longer provisional, does this body still appoint? No. No, it's elected. Yeah. Okay. But even for a midterm resignation, say, or would the library board, once they're elected, vote for that?
Once the board is elected, they would appoint their own replacement.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. That's it.
I would just say thank you for your willingness to serve. Really appreciate it. It's a great organization, and it sounds like they could benefit from your expertise, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also mention, in case he's listening at home, Patrick Dengate has been on the board for a number of years and gave countless hours and blood, sweat, and tears to the project. And Patrick, wherever you are, we appreciate the service that you gave to the library as well. All right, if there's no further questions, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Piana? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That appointment is adopted. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. All right, item B is the consideration of a special land use for 1641 Bowfield. And Derek, you're going to introduce that item?
Brought a whole crew with me this time. As council is aware, the planning commission or the city requires a special land use approval for in-home residential daycares when there's more than 6 kids, between 6 and 12. Recently, we had application for a special land use for an existing residential daycare operation. Planning commission held a public hearing, reviewed it for the location at 1641 Bowfield. After that public hearing, the planning commission did recommend city council unanimously that they approve the special land use. In your packet, there is the complete staff report and minutes from that night. Also, a basic site plan showing the operations and where they're located. The owner is here. We're going to invite her up to say a couple of words, and then obviously we'll be here to answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Christine Stokes, and I've been running in-home daycare at my house at 1641 Bowfield for just over 5 years. I have 6 kids in my care currently, and I have a constant waiting list. I offer organic food and cloth diapers, and I have a really close relationship with my families. And unfortunately, some of them have kids on my wait list that are siblings of kids that actually go to the daycare already. I've been doing this for over 5 years, and I absolutely love it, and it's my favorite thing, and I have my kids at home with me. I have a really good relationship with my neighbors who came and spoke at the meeting, and I just wanted the opportunity to be able to expand and be able to provide more for my community.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Sure, just a couple. So there was the planning commission, there were no objections to this?
No, there were no objections, and just to remind council, this is the second one coming for rezoning for childcare, to grow the childcare from 6 to 12. We had one on the east side, and I can't remember which street, earlier this year or even late last year.
Yeah.
So the need for accessible and affordable childcare is definitely growing demand in Ferndale, and so I would say that this is a type of sort of home care business that is growing.
And does this require you to add assistants?
Yes, I currently have one assistant because I have my own kids at home already, so even at putting me at 6, I already have to legally have extra care. It does provide me one. I am hiring one extra assistant, which I don't by law need, but I like to have extra staff on hand.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just to note, there were some issues about potential ease of parking at peak times of child drop-off and pickup, and I think based off of when parents come and go, it's not like everybody's arriving at the same time, and then it can be staggered, and that if there was any overlap, it would be very short term, and I think manageable. And the neighbors seem pretty supportive, and know the need that they have in the neighborhood.
Yeah, not only was there no objections, council member, there was a petition submitted with most, if not all, of our neighbors had signed in support of.
I noticed that, and that, which is very impressive. In fact, I talked to a couple of the people on here just to and they were very positive and very encouraging. I don't want to dwell on the one person that wasn't, but we do have a letter from someone who was less than supportive, and we don't have to get into the details, but they raised a couple of issues, parking, as Councilwoman Piana said, and then what they perceived as code enforcement issues. So, Derek, could you just address your perspective on those two issues?
Well, we've never had a quote-unquote code enforcement issue at the property. There's been no violations or no warnings. Much of the information that was presented was offset by exact opposite type responses at the meeting from neighbors. We've never had an issue with that location, either with parking or pickup or drop-off or any even formal complaints on record. So.
I'd like to move then that City Council approve the special land use request for 1641 Bowfield, Sidwell number 2535403-006, subject to the findings listed in the recommended action.
I support.
Now, Greg, did you?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I actually have a question that's kind of general related, not to this specific case. But thank you, Councilwoman Piana, to cover about the parking, because that was one of my questions. The other one is, do we have a requirement of how many of these facilities can be located in a certain amount of distance from one another?
No.
No. So we could actually have a whole street that has daycare on it.
Well, again, each one would be required to come in, have a public hearing, and get a special land use. But yes, in theory, if the special land use was approved for each one, you could.
Okay. Just want to clarify. So, thank you.
Other questions or comments of council? Or of the public? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you, and good luck with your business.
Thank you.
Item C is a consideration of a rezoning at 1741 Livernois. Derek, that's also you.
Yes, sir. As council is aware, recently the city entered into a purchase agreement to sell the former American Legion Hall located on the west side of Livernois, just south of 9 Mile. As part of that purchase agreement, the proposed conceptual plans for the site included the adaptive reuse of the existing building to a multi-unit condominium development, residential development. Unfortunately, the zoning in place currently does not either support a commercial building or a multi-family residential building. So part of that agreement was that prior to scheduling and finalizing the closing, that we would look at rezoning the property. The Planning Commission did hear a rezoning on this item last month, did hold a public hearing on it, and is recommending that a rezoning is appropriate for the parcel based on both the existing use and the proposed use that's been included as part of the purchase agreement. So the process has been followed, and we are here asking council to finalize that rezoning. And obviously the owners or the future owners hopefully are here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Not about the not about the building we're talking about, but next door, how's the liquor store zoned?
Commercial, C2.
Even though there's apartments up top?
Correct.
Okay.
C2 allows, C2 and both C2 and mixed use in the city allows second-story residential in the downtown.
All right, and this doesn't impact them at all?
Correct, not at all.
Thank you.
And Derek, although I feel confident that we'll eventually make a purchase agreement with these gentlemen, even in the absence of that, this would be the right zoning. I mean, this is the zoning that this is what the use that we want to see in this property.
Yeah, correct. Probably,
We wouldn't have to come back
yeah.
and change this if this particular development didn't happen.
No, I don't believe so. And in
Right?
fact, the existing zoning is probably the most inappropriate one
Right.
for the site because it only allows single-family residential, which it has never been and most likely never would be without the removal of the existing building. So.
Motion would be in order.
I move to support that City Council approve the rezoning request for 1741 Livernois Street, civil number 242533, 229034 from R1 Single Family Residential to R3 Single Multifamily with the following findings and conditions, as stated.
Support.
Any other questions or comments of council or the public?
Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead. Ladies first.
I just want to reiterate, as I always do when a rezoning comes to council, is that when you do these many rezonings, it just says that your master plan needs to be updated. And while we're in that process, I expect that we'll have a few more come down this pipeline before we're able to update our zoning ordinance to reflect this. So I appreciate new property owners coming in and working with us and being flexible going through our processes. I know it's not ideal when you want to do a development, and so I just wanted to say thank you working with us.
And I just wanted to say that I'm glad that we're going to move one step closer to redeveloping that property. It's been vacant for a number of years, and I'm really excited as we move forward with it.
Excellent. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, it's been moved and supported. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Polika?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That is adopted. Thanks, gentlemen. The next item of business would be the consideration of precinct boundary alterations. And Marnie, I'm guessing you're going to introduce that
Yes,
item.
I actually have a presentation.
And Mike's going to miss it.
I was just going to say that.
And I'm sure he's home. I'm sure he's home watching.
He's passed out. He was so sick.
He was
Poor
so
guy.
sick, the poor guy. And while she does everything.
Okay, we are proposing to modify our precinct boundaries and polling locations. Why we need to change is that 4 of our current 7 precincts that we have been using for a very long time have become unavailable to us due to restructuring in Ferndale and Hazel Park school districts. And after the excessive wait times of the November 2012 election, the city clerk's office decided it would be prudent to expand the precincts back to 9. We had reduced them from 9 to 7 prior to the presidential in 2012 and had excessively long lines. But it was not necessary to make that change prior to 2016 due to the lower turnout in the elections prior to 2016. So if we expand from 7 to 9, it will reduce the number of registered voters from an average of 2,225 voters per precinct to around 1,900, which would, help a lot to have that many fewer voters. And as Representative Wittenberg noted, the elimination of straight party voting does stand to make voting take a lot longer. The Oakland County Director of Elections, Joe Roselle, estimates that it can take anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes per voter additional without the straight party option. In the recent 2014 November election, we had 45% of our voters did use the straight party option, so that is going to make a
How many?
significant difference. 45%.
45%?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a lot higher than I thought.
Yep, so what will change is that there will be 9 precincts instead of 7, with 1 added to each side of the town. The west side will be adding a precinct between 8 and 9 Mile, west from Pinecrest until you get to Marshfield, and then it would swing over to Livernois, and then it's westward from Livernois. On the east side, the new precinct will be east of Woodward, west of Hilton, between Academy and Camborne. All the precincts except for precinct number 7, which currently votes at the Curling Club, and part of precinct 2, which votes right now at the high school, will have new polling locations. So this is a rather major change. This map indicates our current 7 precincts, and you can see where the proposed changes are. Right there on either side of Woodward, there are 2 small precincts that would be the new changes. So where we'll be voting, we have looked at a lot of locations. State election law requires that we house our precincts in publicly owned facilities when available. If it's not convenient or not available, nonprofit facilities can be used. So we are looking at precinct 1, maintaining the same boundaries as it has now, but the polling location will actually be within the precinct at the Renaissance Vineyard Church. Precinct number 2 will stay at high school. Precincts number 3 and 9 will be moving to the Kulik Community Center, as there are 2 distinct entrances and 2 distinct voting areas. We feel that that is the best place to put 2 precincts should we need to. The purpose of them being 3 and 9 is so that they're distinctively different numbers, so that it might be easier for people to remember their new precincts, because everybody hates when their precinct numbers get joggled around. I know mine have about 5 times since I've lived here. And precinct 4 will be at the Coolidge School. Harding is no longer available, as it's now a preschool. Precinct 5 will be at the Ferndale Ferndale Area District Library, as University High is no longer available. Edison School in the Hazel Park School District is not an option any longer, so that precinct will be moving to the Ferndale Free Methodist Church. Precinct number 7 will stay at the Curling Club, and precinct 8, which is the smallest of the precincts and in that part of town, will be voting at the Autumn House. We did make that precinct a little smaller to promote more people being able to walk to the precinct, as the parking is out of all of the potential polling locations a little more problematic. So how we'll be informing our voters is that state law requires us to mail a new voter ID card to all affected voters. So our plan is to get those all out in the mail on January 4th after the holidays are over, to comply with the requirement to provide 60 days notice in advance of the next election, which is the presidential primary on March 8th. So we will also be putting an insert into the Next City newsletter with a map and indication of where you'll be voting, where your new polling location is. So that will get out to every home in Ferndale. The city website and Facebook page will be updated with reminders, and we'll be doing a series of informational pieces throughout the year, as well as just a reminder that if people have signed up for news alerts, they will be received notice by email when we update the news section of the city website. And so just to let people know who decided where to put the new precincts, Oakland County created a map of every block in Ferndale, and with the number of voting age residents as calculated by the 2010 census. State election law requires that precinct boundaries are along roads and geographical features such as the railroad tracks. The number of potential voters were determined by adding the block data and the boundaries, and were redrawn based on those numbers and the geographical features. So we tried to use public facilities where available, so that's why we are at the, still at the Kulik Center, using Autumn House, using the public library, but when they are not available, we did end up in 2 churches, which are nonprofit facilities, and we assessed them for feasibility, such as walking through, making sure that it was, there's plenty of room, there was plenty of parking. Both of these churches have adequate supply of parking. The space is ADA compliant, it's easy to get to, it's very well suited for our purposes. So we were very cognizant of that. Our election task force made suggestions, and they helped the clerk's office determine the final layout as we proposed it. So what voters need to know, what they need to do, is just to look for their new ID cards in the mail after the first of the year. When they go to the polls, they don't need to have those ID cards. Those are just to let them know where the new voting precincts are. Just bring photo ID that is required by state law. Refer to the map that will be included in the city newsletter. Any questions, you can contact the clerk's office or check the Michigan Voter ID Center. One of the things that legislature is talking about doing as to kind of soften the blow with the elimination of the straight party voting is to finally pass no reason absentee voting, which is great, except that if you don't meet one of the 6 statutory requirements, you have to apply in person, which if people work, that means they have to come during business hours, which doesn't make it quite as great as it could be, but it will be helpful. So anyone who is eligible to vote by AV can sign up to be on our permanent AV list. That certainly will help lessen the load at the precincts. So if you haven't already, liked our Facebook page, sign up for Ferndale email alerts. And as a final note, I just want to thank the election task force. These people have been absolutely fantastic, volunteering their own time and coming up with just such amazing ideas, not just for the polling locations, but how to recruit precinct inspectors and voter turnout. I think we've come up with so many wonderful ideas. So I do want to thank Kat Bruner-James, Heather Colden-Voss, Kevin Deegan-Krause, Michelle Delacourt, Jen Jo Lombardo, Linda Gillies, Donnie Johnson, Valerie Owen, Councilman Pollica, Bob Porter, Mary Rising, Gloria Sherman, Pamela Smith, Stephen Smith, my deputy Barb Miller, and Community Engagement Director Kara Sokol. Couldn't have done this without those people. And that is what I've got. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one. What is the, maybe two, what's the 2016 spend to make this change between mailing, additional election workers, and whatever else we might make incremental increases in spending to accommodate?
Well, to do the mailing is about $5,800, I believe. And since we need to change at least 4 of our polling locations regardless, there is going to be a cost there. So we're proposing to mail to everyone regardless of whether there's a change or not, just so that they are, you know, kind of with the big changes reiterating who votes where so that everyone is aware of where they should be. And I'm sorry, what was the other?
Well, an additional precinct workers on election day?
It's about $150 per worker. We would love to have at least 6 new workers per precinct, especially as it gets closer to November. Well, when it is November, we're looking at if we can do at least 8 people, because what we're also looking to do with managing this change is to have just a specific person who can actually greet the people and make sure they're in the right place and get everybody where they need to go. So we have that additional cost. So, you know, it will be a...
So you're at another, you know,
$1,500
range.
Yeah.
Plus you've got this will be in place for the primary as well, correct?
Correct, yes. So our precincts as we know them are done. Good. So this change would go into effect for the March 8th presidential primary.
And just a comment, I know the feedback I got from residents of the public housing were really happy. At least one location went back. They would have preferred 2, but I understand the parking situation there is difficult.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, if I may interject, that's one of the reasons why the committee suggested making that actually the smallest location, the smallest precinct.
I was referring to parking at Withington, but yeah, I get you.
Oh, you're talking about, okay. Yeah. We're not voting at Withington?
That's the point.
Oh. No, we're voting at Autumn House now.
Right, you're going to Renaissance instead, which has more parking than Withington does.
Yes.
But that was one of my questions. Withington was an issue of parking?
There really isn't capacity for parking at Withington.
Yeah, and I'm not terribly familiar with the entry area, but with Renaissance, it is a very large facility, and since that's our largest precinct, I wanted to make sure that there was not only sufficient parking, but sufficient space for people to line up, especially in November. You don't want the possibility of there being
If
people
I
outside.
could offer the suggestion to the, even though it's the smallest precinct, we may want to talk to Fern Care, which is just kitty quarter from Honor House, so that on election day, if they don't have hours of operation, we could leverage their parking lot as well. Because even with the small precinct, it still might be a little tight. I think it's a great choice. But you may want to approach the Fern Care Board about leveraging their parking lot that day.
Oh, thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, through the chair, I have a question about long-term viability of these precincts. Since I was on council to go from 9 to 7, the first time around, one of it was monetary in terms of reducing the budget because we were reducing all of our department budgets as one of the reasons, not the only one. I was wondering what is the sustainability of this new precinct? Are we gonna? How long do you think it's going to be good for?
I don't foresee there needing to be a change anytime in the foreseeable future. We have worked with both of the churches to make sure that they are understanding that this is a longer-term commitment. City Attorney Chris has requested that we get agreements with them so that if they do want to pull out, that there's a certain amount of notice that they would have to give us. But we have been working with both, and both of the pastors think it's an absolutely amazing opportunity to work with the community, to kind of give back, to give that space. So I don't see either of those being any sort of an issue. And with our public facilities, I met with the library board. They voted on allowing us to use it as a precinct, so they're aware of some of the potential issues, and we're doing everything that we can to mitigate impact to their operations. We looked at it with the eye of not having to make another change because, you know, as I said, I've lived here for 15 years, and this will be like the 5th change for me, so I understand that people get frustrated with it. So we wanted to make it as long-term sustainable as we could under the circumstances.
Well, and if I may again interject, you know, it's kind of hard to determine. 4 years ago when we made the change, you know, who would have thought then that Wilson, you know, University High School would have been closed, you know? There's... So, but, you know, there's nothing to say that, you know, in 4 or 5 years, you know, Coolidge could close or one of the churches could close. You just don't know. But at this point, we don't see that occurring. Now, I did have I did want to identify one clarification. We currently have enough equipment to support 9 locations.
That is the reason that we selected 9. We are getting one more tabulator. It is being supplied to us at no cost, so that we do need one more. But we have 9 laptops from when we had 9 precincts before for the electronic poll books, so that's why 9 seemed like a good number. Instead of 8, we could have just gone with one more precinct, but there really wasn't the benefit of reducing the numbers of voters in each precinct enough, where the 2 additional takes it down at an average of over 300 voters per precinct, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're out there actually processing them, it really is huge to be able to reduce that number of people.
And we also work with a little bit of a limitation, especially particularly on the east side, because part of our city falls in a different school district. So the boundaries of those districts on the far east side match those that align with the school district. So we had very little wiggle room of where we could, you know, create those precincts.
Right.
Otherwise, you're creating 2 polling locations with in one area with 2 different ballots, and that would be total chaos of who gets what ballot.
Couple things that strike me. I agree with the notion that we would prefer public over private places, which is why I'm a little disappointed that we're not using Withington again. As someone who voted in Withington for about 5 years, I never had any issues voting there, and didn't seem any worse than any other place. And in fact, I think it encourages more people to walk if in that neighborhood. They probably won't walk across Pinecrest. Maybe I'm wrong, but so I'm curious that there was that perception that Withington, and maybe it's just anecdotal on my part, but I'm curious the perception that Withington was less than accommodatable, if that's the right word.
And I wasn't part of to clarify, I just threw that out there from my perception. I wasn't part of the discussion of Withington over Renaissance, but in looking at both buildings, there's clearly more parking at Renaissance. So I'm assuming that came into factor,
But that's fine. The one thing that's more puzzling to me about this, I must admit, and I think the map is right, I do not understand the logic of the numbering.
Well, the logic of the numbering was to make the change as minimal as possible for as many people as we could. I will admit that I have an anal retentive streak, and I wanted to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So do I, and I'm close to encouraging you to do that, because this is bizarre to me. And I realize what you're doing, but in 10 years, nobody's going to remember what it was 10 years ago. So we should do something that's logical, in my opinion.
Well,
There's been 3 precincts then anyway.
Huh?
There'll only be 3 precincts in 10 years anyway.
Right. So it's just that 9 is next to 1, which is nowhere near 8. It's just 6 is next to 4, which is nowhere near 5. It's just bizarre. And so when you make this as a map, it's bizarre.
We have to change the street index with QVF, so we have to, every single change that's made on every single street has to be sent into the state. So that, I will admit, that was part of the reason for not changing more than necessary. And we did have discussions about this. And I don't disagree that it's a little unusual, and like I said, in my perception as well, I want to number them a different way, but it does take a great deal of time to go through the street index. I spent days working on it, and it will take days longer if we make numerical changes. 3 and 9, we placed that way, as I noted, to kind of give some easily definable numbers that were distinctly different. So if you're voting at the Kulik Center, you know, if you're at 2 or 3, you might not remember which is which, but if it's 3 or 9, that might stick with you a little more. Because I voted at Taft when it was 8 and 9, and I stood in the wrong line for 2.5 hours. So, you know, so we kind of took that kind of thing into consideration. It is a kind of an odd numbering system. I looked at other communities to see if anybody else was placing precincts in a similar manner, because I thought, well, you know, do we just go whole hog and change everything for everybody? Or, and I did look, and Rochester and Troy, other communities, they have like 9 is next to 37. So I see there is precedence for it. I understand why it looks a little odd.
It was really designed to have the least impact on the most voters, so that, you know, if you were 1, you're going to be 1 most likely in the new precinct. The only change will be the location. If, you know, most of 2 has not changed, you know, a lot of 3 hasn't changed. You really don't get into change until you get into 7, 8, well, 8 and 9, really, because part of 5 is now into 8, and part of 4 is now into 8. and then you've kind of broken up 2 and 3 to create 9. So it was really designed, the numbering was designed to have the least amount of impact to a majority of residents, so that they don't have not only a change to their location, but a change to their number.
Nope, I agree. I hear what you're saying. I would tell you that we've changed them so much lately. I've only been 2 for a few years, so changing it again, maybe that's a problem, but I'll just tell you, I've looked at a lot of precinct maps, and I've never, maybe Rochester and Troy are this combobulated, but I've never seen one this sort of out of whack before. If I'm the only one that's bothered by it, then I'll be quiet, but otherwise I would suggest that you put these in some sort of rational order. But if it's just me, that's fine. And I guess it is, so that's fine.
I personally don't have I understand the need, but if it costs more money and it's more work, I can live with this. It's not it won't keep me up at night. I sure wish Mike was here for this discussion, though.
Me too now. He's a logical guy, and he wouldn't be able to follow this either. Yeah. So it's just that we're trying to protect something that hasn't been around very long, and in 10 years, no one's going to remember. So we're going to look back at this someday, not us, but someone is going to go, what were they thinking? I love the map, though, and I like the space, the placement of the. I think you've done a wonderful job. That's a minor point, all in all, but I do find that really strange.
Well, and I have to say, originally, I think, 8 and 9, the numbers were actually switched, and I made the suggestion of swapping 8 and 9 so that 9 and 3 were at Kulik rather than 3 and 8, because I didn't want people to think that looking quickly, seeing the same shapes, that they would go into the wrong location. You know, I'm 3, but I go into 8, or I'm 8 and I go into 3, just based on shapes. So, trust me, we took a lot of time to.
I'm going to make a puzzle out of this.
No, you're not. I just wanted on the record for posterity, when Gary at the Historical Society puts this in the records, that the mayor thought that was weird.
Posterity is noted.
All right. I like all the rest of it.
Yeah, part of this, which you haven't gotten to, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder. Part of this also includes a change to parking on the day of, because now that we are utilizing government buildings downtown, i.e. the library, it is suggested and requested that we make free parking on Election Day.
I like it.
Joe's provided me with numbers if you want to hear them. At the minimal, we would suggest that the City Hall lot, the Falvey lot, and the library lot
do it all or nothing.
Free.
I mean, that's another discussion.
One of the things we discussed as the task force was how to make voting more of like a big thing, like make it kind of like a festival, and to give it more of a more all-encompassing atmosphere. We were hoping to really promote the Show Us Your Sticker, and to get the businesses in town on board, so that if there's free parking downtown and you've got your I voted sticker, maybe you can get a discount at a shop, or maybe you get a discount at a restaurant. So we're hoping to make this more of a citywide initiative. So we would love to see free parking throughout the whole city on the election days. It looks like at this point their elections in 2016 will be on March 3rd, August 2nd, and November 8th, I believe. So it would, there is the potential for a May 3rd special election, but that looks unlikely. So hopefully it'll just be the three days. So we are requesting free parking for those days.
All right. We do need a motion, actually.
I would like to make the motion to adopt the precinct boundary alterations plan as presented by the city clerk, to approve free parking on election days, and to authorize the city clerk to sign agreements with polling locations as necessary.
Support.
Is there further discussion or comments, either by council or anyone in the audience?
I'd just like to add my compliments to the work group. I got the opportunity to attend one of the meetings, and I was really pleased with the level of participation and amount of work that went into this. I think you guys did a great job, so congratulations.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would like to extend my thanks to everybody on the committee. It was amazing how quickly an hour, usually an hour plus, would go by, because it was just a constant throwing out of ideas. We could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do this.
I have a question. Is the task force going to continue on throughout the year?
We've officially finished our initial meeting schedule, but many of the members are interested in staying on and helping us implement some of these great ideas that we came up with throughout the year. So I was waiting to find out what happened tonight before I get a hold of them all. But yes, we have several members who are very willing to stay on board, and I'm just overwhelmed by the level of participation and the bright, intelligent people that we have in this community. It was a wonderful experience working with everyone.
All right. Marnie, you want to call the roll, please?
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted.
Thank you.
Item E is a consideration to resume licensing of public lodging houses and multiple dwellings. And
Mayor,
is
I'd be happy to introduce that item.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dan.
Your Honor, for over 50 years, the city has had ordinance regulating public lodging and hotels, multiple dwellings, and required for people who are engaged in that activity that they have a license. Several years ago, the city administratively stopped the processing associated with that licensing. And in reviewing this issue, staff is recommending that council resume the licensing process associated with multiple dwellings and hotels. The basic provision of the ordinance provides that there's an investigative process and inspection process associated with those types of activities to make sure that they're in compliance with all of the city's ordinances, regulations, and codes. And it is an important public health and safety concern, which city staff recommends council direct to be reinstituted. Just one other issue, it is a timely period for council to direct this, in that the ordinance provision provides that the licensing expires on an annual basis on December 31st. So to the extent council decides it wishes to reinstitute this is an appropriate time.
This question of clarification, if this is already a requirement in our ordinances and we're just not doing it, what's the purpose of officially adopting it as a...
Well, you're not adopting it as an ordinance already on the books, but it's to provide guidance to administration that this is something that council thinks is appropriate, because it has been, there has not been the processing of this for several years, and the proposal is to reinstitute this.
Okay.
Reinforce the policy.
Exactly. I would like to move that we direct city staff to resume processing and inspection of public lodging houses or multiple dwellings for possible licensing as provided for under Chapter 7 Business Regulations and Licenses, generally Article 7 Public Lodging Houses and Multiple Dwellings, Division 2, license, and to direct the city clerk to provide notice by regular and certified mail to any known public lodging house or multiple dwelling within the city that a license is required after December 31st, 2015, along with a copy of the ordinance provisions, and to further inform any existing public lodging house or multiple dwelling that an application is required to be submitted to the city and that an investigation and inspection by city departments is required.
Support.
All right. Been moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Any further comments or discussion?
Questions. So it was kind of very general description of public housing. Hotels, motels, what about like apartment complexes?
Well, if I could, through the chair,
Sure.
The definition of public lodging house means any hotel, rooming house, tourist home, efficiency unit, motel, or other similar place where transients or members of the public, whether travelers or not, are accommodated by the renting of rooms out as a business. and not as an accessory use, provided that no multiple dwellings shall be included as a public lodging house.
Okay.
To clarify on the councilman's, if I may, through the chair comments, it's not public housing, it's public lodging housing. I just don't want to create the confusion that they're governed under another whole set of.
Gotcha. Thank you
Yeah.
for the clarity.
Did I not say lodging?
You did, you didn't.
What does, through the chair, what does tourist home mean?
Tourist home is a concept which actually is starting to gain traction again, similar to Airbnb.
So
We're
this
taking-
limits Airbnb?
It fits within the definition of public lodging house, so it would require a license for that type of activity to happen.
It's not limiting, they're just requirements. That you have to be inspected, you have to get a license.
Any further questions or comments?
I'm curious now, touching on that point, since we have all of this in place, what would be the fine for someone like, I'm assuming that like an Airbnb, you know, a person's private home that, you know, fails to have inspection is going to be treated differently than a multi-unit facility.
Well, through the chair, a violation of this particular ordinance section falls under the general ordinance penalty sections of the Code of Ordinances, which is, for this particular section, would be a misdemeanor charge. So the consequence or fine or sanction would be up to the discretion of the judge if there was a violation or citation issue.
Thank you.
So basically, we're saying if you do Airbnb now, once we pass this, people have to come and get a permit? This one or
A
is
license.
everybody?
A license.
And is that normal happening in other cities? Is this?
Yes. A number of communities are, specifically as it relates to tourist homes, are starting to regulate that particular endeavor. There's a lot of various versions associated with that, and I can provide drafts for council if they're interested on that specific point. If there is a concern associated with that being included in the definition of public lodging dwellings, I mean, that's something that could be addressed at a later date.
And how much is our permit?
Public lodging housing. The licensing fee, I don't have the fine schedule in front of me. I'm not sure if Marty would happen to know offhand.
I believe it is $100 over a certain amount of rooms.
Okay, according to Airbnb, there's 119 rentals in Ferndale.
But that's not the same as a bed and breakfast, is it?
No, but this is Airbnb, it's a tourist home. So
I guess I'm fuzzy on the difference, I apologize. Could you educate me? Or Dan or whoever?
Well, Airbnb is like the Uber model of the sharing model. Is that
You're
buying
renting
that
one
from
room.
it. You're renting one room.
Of somebody, as an...
Or a home.
Typically as an accessory use to a resident who is living within the home, as opposed to other concepts where the resident is moving out.
Not always, though. In some instances, it's, you know,
There's a
someone's
lot of
using their
versions.
whole home.
There's a lot of versions associated with that as to what constitutes a tourist home, whether the actual resident is there, whether it's whether they move out and the person who wishes to utilize it moves in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think this opened up a can of worms. I think we're looking at it in one point of view, and now the tourist home is opening up this can of worms. And so I'd like to take a look at this a little bit further.
Sure.
Would you be amenable to just passing this and amending it later, taking it out if
Or
you're
taking that out now and
taking
and
that section
revisit-
out
and
right now,
revisiting
and
the tourist
revisiting that
homes
piece of it.
so that we can pass the rest of it in the.
I really think there's a
If
need
you
for
wish,
that.
if you wish to proceed,
Well, let's remove the Airbnb.
if you wish to proceed this evening, you could proceed with the motion that's been passed and direct that a potential ordinance amendment on the definition of public lodging house come back at your next meeting, which will be your first meeting in January, addressing that. We can have a couple of versions that the ordinance committee could consider and make a recommendation to council.
Okay.
Would that be acceptable?
That would be acceptable.
Good, thank you for the suggestion. I think it's a good one. It's a good catch. Other comments or questions? 119 in Ferndale, wow.
Wow.
Yes. Of course. Come on up, though, just so we can hear you and people at home can hear you.
With the Airbnb, like we're considering doing it over Woodward Dream Cruise, which would be the perfect opportunity. But we'd only be doing it then once, maybe twice a year. So why pull a license for 1 or 2 weekends kind of thing? So could you take into consideration putting a time limit on it, or how many days you're going to be putting it up when you're
Certainly could look
talking
at that.
about
That's
it?
one of the many
Right.
aspects of it, I think. That's a
Correct.
good point. That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, every community, I think, that is an attraction for tourists is going through this. We're no different.
Mhm. Yep, good point. All right. Other comments? Marnie, would you want to call the roll, please?
Council members Martin,
Yes.
Polka,
Yes.
Piana, and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The item is adopted. Moving on now to item F, which is a consideration of the residential parking zone ordinance language. And Joe is going to introduce that item. Only got these three all mixed together.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. See, Mr. Lennon ducked me again. That's 2 in a row. I am here to just follow up on the presentation that was presented on the RPZ policy update in the final council meeting of October. Since then, the Ordinance Review Committee met and reviewed the proposal in its very basic framework, kicked it around a bit, and has put forth a recommendation for moving forward with actual ordinance language. Just a quick overview of what we suggested in October, the baseline policy assumptions. We put forth a comprehensive expansion of what was currently in place in the Southwest District, or what I would call Southwest, West Troy, and West Saratoga. We were looking at expanding that program activity to other downtown streets in the RPZ. We went through an extensive public input process through public surveys, through working with a public focus group that represented each district, and we put together the baseline policy that was presented in October. This was what was originally presented in October. I want to just go over probably the 2 key changes that were distinguished through the Ordinance Review Committee meeting. There was a recommendation by the committee to remove 3 streets from this proposed map. The 3 streets are West Breckenridge, Withington, and East Saratoga. We did discuss this at length during the meeting, and the data didn't quite suggest that there would be a supermajority, 65%, which would be 65% or more, that would want and approve the permit restrictions. Various reasons why it might be the number of rental homes on a certain block, or just the perception that it's not needed for their respective blocks. These opinions were put forth within the surveys that we received back, and they were significant enough for us to consider and pause a little bit. And the one thing we want to make sure that this is policy adopted for the residents and not a burden to residents. The committee did also establish a process to petition, so we will include this in the public information and communications campaign, but we will go to these residents and walk them through the petition process, how to petition to get an RPZ permit program on your street, and then how to move forward with the public hearing at that point for the final adoption by council, should council adopt. So this map just shows the what is being proposed moving forward. You do have 5 streets that are still included. On the southwest side, you have West Troy and West Saratoga. On the southeast side, you still do have East Troy Street. And on the northeast side, you have, I believe that is East Breckenridge between Woodward and Bermuda. Those would be the RPZ ordinances. Now, the committee did still agree that we should move forward with testing the resident permit-only parking, and that would still be on Vester and East Breckenridge between Bermuda and Paxton, I believe. Leland. Thank you, Leland. Again, during the review process and the survey process, there were a lot of voices that put forth concerns over public safety issues that could be identified principally to the narrow width of the street and the parking conditions that are currently in place on Vester and East Breckenridge. Because this is a new type of permit, we wanted to begin here and learn a little bit, and that segues into the hours of enforcement and some of the other rules. So the hours of enforcement that were being proposed would be to, at first, enforce the RPZ streets suggested between 11 a.m. and midnight. And the resident permit-only parking will be 4 p.m. and midnight. The difference behind that would be, again, because we don't really know what permit-only parking looks like, there's no 2-hour time restrictions, which means there is no parking on these streets other than resident permit-only. That being said, we wanted to leave room for service vehicles or other guests, daytime guests at least, for these residents to still be in place. So there is some modicum of flexibility. And during the survey responses did indicate that most primary concern was the evening concern, which aligned with the nighttime traffic. As I said, there are 5 RPZ streets. The general criteria to obtain a permit remained the same. Here are the general qualification credentials, and that is provided in the packet as well. Generally, you have to show proof of residency. You have to have an updated vehicle registration and no outstanding payments that are currently owed to the city to obtain an RPZ. And the RPZs are still good for only 1 year. You must apply to renew every year. We are suggesting still the September 1st or August 30th. That would be in alignment with the survey results as well. Proposed implementation, we are still looking. We think it is feasible for us to implement this by early spring of 2016. I didn't want to give a concrete date. I think the objective would be as follows: to focus on a sign package, developing the permit creation and other promotional materials and communications January through March, and then have a plan to actually engage the residents that are involved on these streets. Because these streets are segmented and identified very specifically, I think our plan right now is to actually have the materials and go door to door, because it really isn't that extensive. We will be conducting benchmarking traffic studies before, so we have some kind of comparison for the traffic impact on the streets as well as the parking lots, so we can understand where we hit, where we might have missed. And again, this is an ordinance to begin the enforcement of the process, but we will be reviewing this at the end of the year, and again, we're very open to reviewing it and implementing text amendments where it might make sense. And had Mike been here, he could have seen kittens parking cars.
He would have loved it.
Are there any questions that I may answer for you?
If I may, through the mayor. How did you determine 65%, unless I misunderstood you, 65% of the residents on the streets you removed were against this? Is that what you said?
We're not in favor of it.
No, we couldn't.
How did you determine that?
Go ahead.
We didn't want a street to have a simple majority of 51% to approve an RPZ. It had to have a supermajority of people supporting an RPZ, because it wouldn't be really fair to the 49% of the people on the street to have an RPZ on his own that's going to affect the entire neighborhood.
So those that you're proposing to engage, you're going to go out and get a vote?
No.
Okay, so you mean for future RPZs?
We would engage actually each of the 8 streets, but the 5 streets we would engage with the educational materials about the RPZ program that was adopted for those 5 streets. Okay. And then for the remainder 3 streets, because there's an educational component to this, we would walk them through what the program is and then walk them through how to petition for this as a block.
Okay. Outside of the 5 we've identified.
Correct. Yeah, we didn't want to leave them hanging. We didn't want any questions, so we will still provide the same education, but we will just be providing them information on how to petition for this and giving them just general information about the program.
And benchmarking, could you go over that again? What did you mean by benchmarking?
When I say benchmarking, I mean what we did at the beginning, at the outset, was do traffic studies of all the neighborhood parking traffic during all the hours, Monday through Saturday. And we also have traffic studies from the Carl Walker, still of the outer parking lots. So we recognize we're going to be pushing traffic one way or the other. We want to see what that impact is.
And when would you do those benchmarks?
We would do that before the program is launched in March. We can contrast that to what we did last spring, which would have been in April and May.
I have comments about that. Do we want to
Okay.
wait for the motion, or
Yeah,
can I make them now?
yes,
Okay.
please.
I'll hold my other comments.
All right. Other questions of clarification or a motion?
I move to approve the ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Traffic and Motor Vehicle Code, residential parking to create residential parking zones for East Troy Avenue, Woodward east to Paxton, East Breckenridge, Woodward Avenue to Bermuda, West Troy Avenue through Woodward west to Livernois, West Saratoga through Woodward west to Livernois, and resident-only parking zones for East Breckenridge through Woodward to Bermuda and Vester Woodward to Bermuda in the City of Ferndale Code of Ordinances.
Is there support? Is there
Support for discussion.
Actually, I have.
All right.
I have a clarification on the motion. The resident-only parking zone, East Breckenridge, Woodward to Bermuda. And Vester Woodward to Bermuda. I think that's incorrect because Vester Woodward to Bermuda is all business. I think you meant Bermuda to Leland.
I did. I think I got dizzy writing that motion. I apologize.
Yeah. I think where it says.
Yes, if you could please correct that.
I think where it's
There is
East
one.
Breckenridge, yeah.
Yeah. So what would the correction be?
Dan, if you can correct me, I think it was Bermuda to Leland for both streets, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So it would be Vester between Bermuda and Leland and East Breckenridge between Bermuda and Leland.
Yeah, if I may, it would be resident-only parking for East Breckenridge,
Woodward to
Bermuda
Leland.
to Leland, and Vester, Bermuda to Leland.
Why
Yes,
would we?
that's correct.
Why would we do East through the chair? I'm sorry. Why would we do East Breckenridge? Why would we leave Woodward to Bermuda out of this and not just go Woodward with Leland? Because there's residents on that first block of East Breckenridge.
Sure. There were, we didn't recommend that because the primary purpose for the impetus for the permit-only parking was the narrow conditions that were kind of an impact from the alley that does lie in between Vester and East Breckenridge. There was no alley on that side, and there
Right, but if I'm reading this correctly, and maybe I'm not, I'm sorry, because the language is because we're changing the language. But so, are we doing anything from Woodward to Bermuda on East Breckenridge?
Yes, that's just the RPZ.
He's saying no.
East Breckenridge between Woodward and Bermuda.
Okay, so resident only was, okay, all right.
Yeah, but yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you knocked off one of my comments, you're good.
All right, other comments, questions?
I do have other, spring benchmarks, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, are a complete waste of time. These neighborhoods, particularly on the east side, are crushed from May to August because of the festivals. That's where all the calls came in last year. That's where all the, especially from Woodward to Leland. To look and see what the traffic is, it's every weekend between May and August. So I think a spring study is next to worthless for us. I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I don't think it's telling us anything what we want to know. It's like if I check traffic patterns on I-75 at 1 a.m., hey, we got plenty of lanes. You know, I mean, it's not the right time to look at that kind of thing.
Okay.
Would registration be available online?
That's one of the goals, actually. We're working on developing a concept for an online portal over the next 3 months as well. That's a hope. It's not a guarantee, but it's a hope. That we
Yeah,
have
that'd
something
be great if we could, just to
That's
make
that's the vision, though. That's what we're shooting
At
for.
the very least, when it's time to re-register, because that's
Correct,
when you'll
yeah.
get most people that would like to make that simpler.
I'm sorry, I have one more. May I ask, what was the logic in removing the other streets?
The logic behind removing other streets is that we received enough feedback from the surveys that suggested that people would be averse to an RPZ permit policy or time restrictions, you could say, put in place on their streets. We did look at a lot of those streets, and I walked them myself, and I noticed a significant amount of rental populations. Those rental housing can often be converted to 4 or 5 units, which may have more cars than the permit currently provides for. So,
And we're opening to encouraging that.
pardon?
We're opening to encouraging that conversion into multiple units in single houses?
They seem to be in place at the moment. So just basic observations. Also, we didn't receive, nor have we ever received any really significant cause for negative feedback towards parking from the two from West Breckenridge and Withington. We don't really receive comments from them with concerns about excessive parking, nor do we from Southeast Saratoga. So again, we if we couldn't be sure that it would be 65%, we didn't want there to be a potential for burden.
Okay. Thank you.
Through the chair, I just wanted to say, like our elections task force, the task force who came together to actually provide recommendations to the city was pretty extensive as well.
It was.
And really hands-on, and so I just wanted to say thank you to the members representing their streets who helped came up with this process, and I feel it's been fairly vetted through the residential side. So I just want to say thank you for having something very thorough, a lot more thorough than when we launched the pilot 3 years ago. My question to you is that do we need to adjust any contract with Republic Parking in order to manage this?
No, it's under the scope of enforcement of the city's parking system. Once the residential parking zone is adopted, that's enforceable.
That's good. Oh, I'm sorry. One more. I want to echo what Melanie said about the task force. It was really well thought out, and you did a great job with it. I commend you. Was the revisions and the removals of the streets taken back to that task force, or does the ordinance committee do it independently?
The ordinance review committee did it independently, but comments and insights were offered to the group. We didn't receive any feedback.
Okay.
I'd also like to acknowledge Amanda Hanlon, if she's still here, and she's not. She participated in the focus group, and I actually hadn't met her before. So, Amanda, if you're watching, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
I as well echoed the comments of my fellow council members toward the committee that worked on this, and as someone who was on the ordinance committee with Councilman Lennon and reviewed this over the last couple of months, 6 weeks, I made a number of suggestions, alterations. Ultimately, I will share my opinion that I don't think this is the right time yet to implement this, but I didn't want to stop this from coming to council for discussion. There has been a number of, well, let me back up for a second. A lot of complaints tend to happen later at night, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2 a.m. My concern is this enforcement ends at midnight, and there have been conversations within the DDA and downtown about maybe changing the meter times, which if we move that later in the day, in the evening, that's going to change our contract with Republic Parking. My concern was, with all of these changes, why are we going to implement a program that possibly in 2, 3, 4, 5 months is going to change again? And maybe we should wait till we have a handle on the parking times and management of that, and then implement this program. Because I don't think this is going to solve a lot of the problems of people complaining at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. People are parking in front of my house. There's no enforcement that's going to happen during those times, and that's when we tend to get the most complaints. So, again, I didn't want to stop this from coming to council for conversation, but me personally, I don't support this tonight.
Through the chair, I was wondering why the committee decided not to go to 2 a.m. since the committee was the body that was recommending the policy guidelines.
Part of the committee process was to take a balanced approach and consider current staffing availability. And I think one of the goals was to make sure we adopted a policy that was truly enforceable at the outset. At this point, I don't know that we have staffing availability for late night enforcement. That doesn't mean that there never could be. That means we don't know what we don't know. But if we get some real-time enforcement in and we get some experience in and these streets are actually policed through midnight. That might change what we know is reality right now. So we were, in the committee, was willing to get some experience with a true enforced, consistently enforced system. And then if there were still late night concerns, again, that could be part of our program review process. We can certainly, we can always amend ordinance language as well. It is certainly not set in stone.
I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I appreciate that explanation, and I think what we've done with our parking is every year we're reassessing because we're getting better, we're getting new technologies. And so, while I understand your position, I don't want to be the enemy of perfect, and that we need to try something in order to figure out if this is the right direction or not, than waiting. I also know that we have the DDA's figuring out new parking times for the downtown and looking at that and coming up with a recommendation, as well as an employee parking type of program as well. So I think there's a lot of things in play, and rather than trying to test them all at once, I think it could be very confusing and complicated. So I do like the staggered rollout, and I think your timing here is appropriate. And I just think we need to make sure that we have good timing alignment with the DDA, as well as coordinated communications.
Yeah, and I'd like to also acknowledge that we recognize that any changes we put forth here certainly don't live in a vacuum. So we will be moving to meet with Barry and the DDA on some strategies for how we might be able to improve the downtown long-term permit parking program that is in place for the business owners right now. And that's something we need to do immediately.
And I think that's true. This isn't the only solution. It's part of the solution, and I think that's definitely one thing that's in my head. This alone won't solve the problem, but it could help us move towards it. And the comment you made, I was thinking of the phrase, the perfect is the enemy of the good. This isn't, yes, and this isn't perfect, and it might need to be tweaked, but I think we need to put a framework in place that begins to set the expectation for those areas. So I'm not sure if this is perfect. I'm not sure if those hours are right or if we have this staffing, but we've talked about this an awful long time, and I'd hate for us not to at least begin to put the framework in place to see if this works, frankly. So I am supportive of it. Thank you, Joe.
If I may make one final comment through the chair. I'm going to vote for it. I'm not thrilled about, I think it's too anemic now with the removal of the additional streets. I'm not arguing your logic. It's not a perfect agreement, but it's a step forward, and it's progress. I've been working on this for 4 years, and I'll be supportive of any progress we make. I agree with the mayor. We may have to come back and revisit this and tweak it. But it's been 4 years. Let's move forward.
I do recommend that we don't wait as long as we did between our pilot launch to the next iteration. So if we can put, I know you guys are doing annual reviews and measurement and things like that, but if we can have a progress report by the end of the year, and that would give you 6 months of implementation, just to give us where we are, right? Because you're launching when? I can't.
In spring?
We would hope to launch in early spring. So my hope is that at the very latest it will be April 1st. But I think we would be certainly happy to come back with a progress report the month before the renewals, which would be September 1st, the Labor Day weekend after that. So we can revisit this in August, and we'll give you a detailed report on the progress we've made and the success
Well, I know one thing
or lack thereof.
My fellow Councilman Pollica, we like timelines.
Love timelines.
Implementation timelines, so that's for you. So thank you.
All right. Any other comments, questions? If not, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members of Pollica,
While I do respect and appreciate your positions, I'm going to vote no.
Tiana,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thanks, Joe. And finally, our last regular agenda item is a consideration of an agreement with Lexipol. And Fire Chief Sullivan, that looks like yours.
Mayor, Council, Lexipol is an organization that was formed by Gordon Graham, an attorney who has a background in risk management, Dan Merkel, and I forgot the other gentleman's name here, Bruce Prayett, in 2003.
Gordon Graham is a national speaker on law enforcement issues and fire issues. He is a big advocate in reducing the deaths in public safety to police officers and firefighters throughout the country. So using his risk management background, he came up with predictable is preventable. If you can predict it, it can happen. And a lot of things in policies and agencies, you don't have the staff and that to go through it. It would cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. So in their company, Lexipol goes through with federal and state statutes and case law and updates policies for you. But the biggest part of Lexipol is they put it into a web-based training program, which we don't buy any software or anything. We just have access to it. And then the guys can train about 10 minutes on every shift on the policies in that. And policies we're talking about are probably very high-risk things, and yet they're low incidence. So there's a chance that you don't do it very often, and you don't know the policy, things could go wrong. So we would have training records and the necessary legal background to go with it. Dan Christ was good enough to go through the whole policy or the agreement, and there were some issues and got most everything finished. I can let him speak to the one issue we didn't quite agree on with Lexipol, but I would still like to move forward with it because they won't back off the issue, and Dan would be more versed on it as he talked directly with attorneys from Lexipol.
Certainly, through the chair, it's included in council's communication as it relates to the one concern, which is normally when a vendor is providing a particular service to the city, they would indemnify or hold harmless the city associated with their errors or omissions. Here, they're proposing to propose policies, and they are saying, it's any mistake they make relative to that policy, they are disclaiming any liability or associated responsibility. I have suggested that be modified. I understand the chief's concern and his recommendation that it's a good product. And obviously it's council's call as to whether to assume that risk. One way to reduce the risk is to not simply adopt any policy recommendations that they make without properly reviewing it and making sure that it is appropriate. They may be the expert, but mistakes happen, and you want to make sure that you minimize any risk.
How would we do that?
Well, you're going to have to review their recommended proposals to make.
Who would be qualified to do that?
Well, it would be the chief in conjunction probably with my office to make sure that there's not a blatant error relative to the policy recommendation. They're national, and they need to make sure that they're cognizant of the circumstances associated with Michigan law.
Which is fine, except after the first year, we're going to be spending $5,700 a year. We could spend way more than that on your time of reviewing all the policies, so then suddenly this could be a much more expensive proposition.
The discussions I had with their representative, I didn't speak actually with their counsel, but it was that, that's not a risk that they want to take. But my position back to them was it's their policy they're recommending. So while it's perhaps a small risk, I had recommended that council not assume that risk unless it's comfortable with the product that is produced and recommended by the vendor.
Okay. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Through the chair, I have a question. What relation does this review have with our HR department?
I believe HR is fully supportive of it. Our policies are very old and outdated, and as we need them, we update and move along, but there's a lot of things on the record, probably no different than ordinance law within cities, and that there are things that are still on the books that no one deals with, but they're there. And to bring us up to par, Lexipol would be able to do that, and a lot of it has to do with the training in that, and one of the things HR always recommends is records of continual training. And to date, even in my 6 years, we have very little records on trainings that have occurred. What we've done, we have record of, but everything prior to that, there really is no proof in the pudding by paper or digital record, if you will.
I need some education here. Is it standard for cities' HR department to manage the trainings and things like that, or at least keep track of?
To track, yes, but to the SOPs of the public safety department, it's usually within the public safety department.
Okay.
But we definitely, one of the reasons when Chief had talked to me about this, that the value of having somebody come in and really strengthen and control and provide very concrete SOPs will help, not only in safety, but just in general management of the department.
Basically, you would scrub, do a thorough cleansing.
Yes.
And then reset.
That would be,
And then your dollars every year is to maintain.
Correct, that is correct.
And use their system.
That's correct.
Which is electronic based, so employees can do electronic signatures stating that they've reviewed and signed them and agree.
Yes.
Yep.
And not can, but will? I mean, is it, this,
If-
this will be a mandatory training?
Yeah, they update the system for us, and we have a choice of any policies along with what Dan's concerns were. We have the choice and modification of any policies that we put into play.
'Cause there are
So if we know it just doesn't fit our locale and that, we can adapt it to or remove it from. They will give us a full print of all the policies and then a PDF version, non-editable, that we can put on a website or that if anybody wanted to know for transparency.
Okay, more questions, just one more. And so would the fire department be responsible for managing this contract and renewing it every year via HR support?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not going to become a contract that goes in a corner somewhere
Oh,
and forget
no.
about it in school and becomes dusty and then find it 10 years later?
No.
Well, and just a point of clarification, maybe Dan can help with that, is we set SOPs all the time. And so if the chief reviews it and approves it, is that enough? He would do that anyway on his own. Go ahead.
Well,
If I may, we have ordinance language that indicates that the Police and Fire Commission, speaking of dusty and old, approves all policies for the police and fire department.
Okay. We could just engage
I
them
mean,
again. I mean, the bottom line is we're
Or
going to have
change
to,
the, figure how we.
we have to do
write
a
them
charter
out.
amendment on that,
Well,
but I think
that-
either way, if that's the case.
Through the chair, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the motels and hotels and that. We've never gone before that commission on any policy within the fire department in my 31 years.
In
Not
my
that it's
in my
right.
longest deemed career on it, we took up one issue, and that was Facebook photos at a crime scene.
Yeah, it's not an
But that was for police.
That was
Yes.
PD.
Yeah, it wasn't police.
Because I was with you.
Yeah?
Well, what we could do, I mean, if that is the case, maybe that is the happy in the medium, or meeting in the middle, I guess, if you will, is if we had to reinstate that anyway, if that's the case, then the chief could bring those SOPs to that board and approve it that way. But either way, he either creates those SOPs himself or fixes them himself, or
Right.
we have
Or
this
he
company
has
come in
this
and help us.
I think this is the right thing to do. I just wanted to remind us. that
I
we
think
have
it
to
is
do this.
too, and because there's 150 or more of these, I would just ask you to use your common sense. Some of them the chief is just going to know instinctively. Some might need to get kicked over to Dan, but I can't imagine that we have to review 150 policies through legal. But
No, and he doesn't go and just write them. It's truly in lockstep with the chief needs and the needs of his command team.
But I wasn't kidding about that. I hope the training is mandatory. This is only as good as
No, it will be mandatory.
as your folks are educated.
Yeah,
so.
because they built the system so it's only 10 minutes a day, so there's no reason at the beginning of every shift that people can't go through. And within a year's time, we should be through the vast majority, or within a year and a half's time, and then it would start to be repetitive, and any changes or updates, then those would be put to the forefront of training, so we know that they got the current version of whatever's out there.
Does this, through the chair, if I may, does this, or how does this impact our agreement with the union?
You have to follow the normal chain of
Yeah.
how you address any new policy changes if there are new. We have to give them a certain amount of notice and post that so that they have plenty of time to comment on that.
Okay.
The issue here is we don't have the policies until we have an agreement, so
Yeah.
we can't move ahead.
Chicken or the egg?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We can't really move ahead, show anybody anything, because we don't have them yet.
Yeah.
But there are standards when you bring new policy forward, how you have to manage the negotiation part of that. Or comment.
And through the chair, and it's sort of somewhat connected but unrelated, follow-up comment.
I'd like to sort of have maybe a legal review on the police and fire committees. Is that what they're called?
Police and Fire
Commission.
Board.
Yeah. Were those put in place to help manage the old management structure that we changed with the vote in 2010?
Yeah.
And so they're still in place even though it doesn't match our current model of government, where we had by charter amendment to change the police and fire chief reporting to city council body to the city manager, along with the legal representation and city clerk. So perhaps it's a structure still set from the old former model that needs to be revisited.
If I may, it's not a reporting relationship, so you'll find that it's not impacted by an organizational structure or a reporting line structure. It's two things: approved policies and procedures, and secondly, there was a segment of the non-union grievance process that could go there in the event that there was an employment grievance, if you will, for lack of a better term, but that's not the language in the 60-year-old language or whatever it is that says that's the last level you can go to for determination.
Well, I'd like to have a review of that and recommendation by the city manager's office of what type of model, because I'm open to restructuring it to fit the needs of the police and fire department for today's needs. So I'm not saying that the current structure is completely incorrect, or parts of it could stay or be revamped. So we're looking at what a lot of our commissions right now. So I think that would be helpful.
I would be supportive of getting rid of it altogether. I just think it'll require a vote.
Yeah, I agree. We've had the conversation for a number of years of eliminating, but it requires a public vote, the police and fire board.
But that's a different issue, so.
So I will move to accept the Ferndale Fire Rescue Mission Agreement with Lexipol for $7,538 for the first year, to be paid to the Fire Department Contractual Services Account 101-336-818, as submitted by Fire Chief Sullivan.
Support.
Moved by Martin, supported by Polika. Other comments or questions, concerns?
Have fun.
Go, Chief.
Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Piana.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Item is adopted. Wonderful. Now moving on to call to, why don't you just stay there, Chief, because now we're going to go to call to council. If there's anything else from the fire department this evening that you'd like to share, if not, you're welcome.
Well, happy holidays as we passing Hanukkah and heading into Christmas, Kwanzaa, et cetera. But if anybody's going to use ceremonial candles in that, I would recommend that they are on a non-burnable surface and nothing burnable above them. Remember, current fire science says that doors are not for privacy. They're for stopping the movement of smoke and fire throughout your house. Things burn 10 to 100 times faster in today's society. So actually, recommendations of the National Fire Protection Association is have a smoke alarm in every hallway, in every room. And I know some people can't afford that. If they don't have any, we have a smoke detector program with the union that we support, coming out and putting them in, and then obviously checking your batteries and your alarms. And a smoke alarm is only good for about 10 years. So it's about $10 for a smoke alarm nowadays. It's a couple bucks for a battery, unless you got one of the 5 or 10-year batteries, and it's well worth replacing them, because fire can actually move with all the NFPA recommendations fast enough that you may not get out without being seriously injured. Fire extinguishers in the home are to help you exit safely, and this is the season for a lot of those types of fires. And if you have a Christmas tree or any other kind of plant, water them so that they are dry. And LED lights are the greatest thing on earth. They have LED candles that flicker and look like candles, but they don't catch anything on fire.
Great seasonal reminder, Chief. Thank you.
I have a question for the
Yeah,
chief.
a question for you, Chief.
You mentioned smoke detectors. Is there any kind of program where someone can donate to a fund for fire detectors for people who can afford them?
We have a cooperative program with the union and the department, and we would take anything. And we're trying to switch over the alarms from just one style alarm, or ionization alarm, to the double kind, so that it indicates whatever kind of smoke it is quickly. And that is a big deal. It's kind of slowed down. We've tried to get people. A lot of our fires that we've had, we find the melted smoke alarm with no battery in it. So a big push is to put batteries back in them, or if you pull it out because you're cooking, set it off, then stick it back in. All you got to do is wave a fan in front of it, fan your hand or a book or paper, and it'll clear it, and it should go back to normal. But yeah, we take donations and purchase smoke alarms regularly. We carry them on the trucks along with the application. If someone didn't have one, even without the application, we'll just put one in for them.
Excellent.
Just
They're
make check
extremely
out the
important.
City of Ferndale or Ferndale Fire Department, or?
Yeah, City of Ferndale, anything can be made out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Collins, anything from the police department this evening?
We too would like to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year before we'll see each other again. We would just like to keep you updated on our hiring and promotional process. We are hiring two. We have two officer positions that are open that we've advertised for, as well as one dispatcher, all been approved by this body, which we appreciate. We've also just recently concluded the promotional process for the position of captain. That went through first ever, we went through an assessment center. So MCO, a company they looked at, candidates went out and spent an entire day through this whole process, and I'm happy to announce that we will be promoting Lieutenant Vincent Palazzolo to the rank of captain as of January 1st. We would have done it earlier, but mess up the holidays, so I'm going to wait till the first of the year. Otherwise, we would be calling people in on that already have Christmas off. So he was gracious enough to wait for the first of the year. In addition to that, we are in the process, we're halfway through the process of promoting one sergeant and one lieutenant, and that will probably happen sometime in the latter part of January 2016. So that's where we're at there.
Great.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chief. Jenny, anything from the HR department this evening?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple quick announcements. Number one is just a reminder to all of our retirees out there who are pre-Medicare eligible. Starting January 1st, you will now be eligible to participate at our Health and Wellness Center located in the lower level of the Madison Heights City Hall. More information about that has been sent to all of our retirees' homes, as well as invitation to some on-site meetings at the City of Madison Heights. And additionally, we are currently recruiting for the position of Finance Director. That posting and a job profile is on our website at www.ferndalemI.gov, and you are able to submit an application online right through the website. And that's it.
If I may, through the chair, just to clarify, you mean retirees of the city of Ferndale, right? Not any
Yes.
retiree within city limits?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saving you some
Thank
phone
you for that
calls.
It is a very limited population. I think there's about 19 of them.
Okay.
that would
Yeah, I'm
qualify, but if
trying to
they're
save you a
watching-
few calls tomorrow.
Wonderful. Jill, anything from the recreation department this evening?
Just one quick announcement. This past, or 2 Saturdays ago, was our annual holiday showplace and breakfast with Santa. We had the largest turnout we've ever had for breakfast with Santa, so I just want to thank Santa himself and all of our wonderful volunteers. We had several from the Boys and Girls Club that joined us again this year. They did an outstanding job. I'd like to thank our seniors who put on a wonderful bake sale, and of course, all of our vendors and everyone that attended. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Jill. Derek, anything else from community and economic development?
We'll make this quick, but we did want to point out a couple of things. At the last Planning Commission meeting, we were happy to see that Dearborn Axle, located on 8 Mile, just this side of Pinecrest, had approved a 75,000 square foot addition on their existing manufacturing facility, doubling their size. They recently had a fire in the building, took that opportunity to look at expansion. We're glad they decided to stay with us. So that's what people start to see taking place over there. They're going to redo the whole building, sprinkle the entire building, and automate their process. So it's quite a significant investment. We thought we'd bring that up just because they don't appear in front of the planning commission or the city council for that approval. Also, I think everybody's noticed the sidewalks finally went in around the new construction at Camborne and Woodward. They had some issues with MDOT and grade and the existing mast arm pole. Those have all been resolved, and the sidewalk is back in, and we expect the sidewalks open within a week or so. So, other than that, we didn't get a chance to stand up and say anything earlier, but we certainly appreciate Councilman Lennon and his protections of staff, and his he was always there for us when we need him in the CED department. So we're glad to see him send off so well, and wish him well. So, Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. A question for
I
you.
have two questions, Derek. Sorry. You talked about the new development at Camborne, and I noticed on Camborne, all the utilities are right there exposed. Is there any plan to kind of like cover them up, or
there's a
does
pad,
everybody get
there's
to
a-
see them for the rest of our lives?
No. There's an ATT. I think you're talking about the ATT pad next to the alley there, has the tubes coming up. And
Well, not
oh, no,
really.
you're along the wall. No,
Along
there's
the
some
wall,
there's some
yeah.
screening going to go in.
Okay.
It won't be completely screened, but there's some green wall type stuff going on there, and hopefully they'll be screened better than they are right now. But you'll see them a little bit, but a lot better than what's there right now.
Okay. And the other question is, any chance that Dearborn Axle is going to change their name to Ferndale Axle?
Actually, I believe they're changing to Detroit Axle. They've brought in a partner and some additional financing, so I think they're going to go with Detroit Axle. We did have that conversation.
Better than Dearborn. Nothing against Dearborn. All right. Let's see. Lloyd, anything from the DPW department? Curbside leaf pickup is done. I know that.
Exactly. Don't steal my thunder.
Okay. Sorry.
As council is aware, the DPW has completed curbside leaf collection. Just to make the residents aware, they still are able to dispose of yard waste this week on their regular trash day by placing it in a marked container or paper bags at the curb. Beginning next week, they will have to transport their yard waste to the Sacra transfer station located on Coolidge between 14 and Maple. In addition to that, just a reminder that on Christmas and on New Year's, if your trash day falls on those holidays, you will be delayed a day, as well as any other pickups for the remainder of that week. And finally, Christmas trees may be disposed of on the regular trash day after Christmas and the regular collection cycle. So that's it.
And
two questions.
And don't put the trees in bags.
Yes, no bags. Preferably remove the ornaments, and sometimes there's a little noise when they go through the chipper, but
That's awesome. Through the chair, if I may, so trash is delayed a day. Both holidays are on a Friday this year. That means you're doing Saturday pickup or delays
yes,
to Monday?
that's what would happen.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kara, anything from the community engagement department this evening? Nothing else. All right. Joe, anything else from the assistant city manager this evening?
I just want to take this opportunity to remind residents and business owners and all visitors to Ferndale that Ferndale does not enforce parking on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, as well as New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So if you do find yourself downtown, avoid paying for parking. You have that opportunity. And we're also going to be looking at posting these dates more visibly in the downtown area. We're going to be working through re-signing some of the parking assets with the RPZ changes and the business permit changes. Part of that educational campaign will be looking at how we better promote that on the kiosks as well, and with the DDA.
Excellent. Thank you. Marnie, anything from the city clerk's office?
I do not believe I have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. April, anything from the city manager?
Just very briefly, with the holiday approaching, the city hall hours have been altered slightly, both for next week and the following week. We will be closed Thursday and Friday of both weeks in observance of the holiday, but we'll be open in between Christmas and New Year's. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Very good. Dan, anything from
Nothing
the
tonight, Mayor.
bigger perspective? All right. Mayor Pro Tem Martin, anything?
Just two things. One, happy holidays to everybody. And secondly, tonight's all about Mike, as well it should be, but this is the end of my first term, so I just want to publicly thank all my colleagues, elected and employed, for just a wonderful 4 years. It's been a very fulfilling experience. I can't wait for the next 4. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Councilman Pollica.
I as well want to thank the staff for another wonderful year. Everyone has done exceptionally well. I've enjoyed working with everyone, and want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, to staff and to the residents.
Thank you. Yeah, very good. And Councilwoman Piana.
Yeah, I have a few things to close out the year with. Since I am on the MML Board of Trustees, I get some updates about legislation, and there's a flurry of legislation at the end of the year on medical marijuana. And even though things are changing on the fly all the time with House bills, there's a piece of local control that was taken away in the current version of this bill that we need to watch. And it says that local communities would still have the ability to opt into wanting any or all of the different facilities, which is grower, dispensary, or testing facility. However, if a local community opted into allowing a facility type, they would no longer have approval or denial authority of each applicant. So,
Which House bill is that?
it's House Bill 4209. So if you could stay on top of that one, Dan, and
Thank
make
you.
sure that we work with Derek and April, that we have the right position on that on behalf of Ferndale, and I can feed that up to the MML staff. I wanted to say thank you to the DDA for a very well-managed holiday ice festival. I had a really great time serving as Mrs. Claus with Santa Claus, and I just think the DDA adapted to some changes this year to the climate.
Wait, you were Mrs. Claus? What?
Who knew? I just thought everybody had a good time, and a lot of people came out. And so, talking a little bit about climate change, I wanted to sort of end the year with some changes that are happening globally that we need to think locally. And there were some pretty big changes at the international level on climate change talks, and they're putting into place a goal of limiting the planet's temperature rise to below 2 degrees Celsius or 3.3 degrees Fahrenheit. And this was in Paris for the COP21 climate change talks. And so they were really talking about getting cities, increasing the number of cities and regions implementing action plans and addressing climate change. And so I thought this was very appropriate for us as we are embarking on our sustainability plan. And I know the FESC recently requested that we rename that to something a little bit more appropriate for Ferndale, because sustainability, that word means so many things to so many people, it means nothing. And I think there will be a lot of resources coming out to help cities. I'm not sure what will come out at the federal level, but Ferndale has always been sort of a green leader, and I think we need to step into this a little bit more dynamically as a city. And really pay attention to our sustainability plan. It's not an add-on plan to the master plan. This is a guiding document, and I don't want us to lose sight of that as a city, as city departments, and that city departments have a responsibility to make sure we are adopting and implementing the best energy efficiency programs and any other types of policies. In particular, on building, new construction, and remodeling, transportation, and renewable energy. And so just wanted to say that we need to pay attention to that, and I'm looking at Derek and Justin to hopefully stay on top of that as things come out through the federal pipeline to the states. I just wanted to say thank you to all our board and commission members for serving yet another year. We couldn't do without you, and you help us navigate some pretty difficult policy decisions, and just continue on. And then I just wanted to say happy holidays, and I'm really wishing for some snow. Because Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas without snow.
Lloyd is saying no.
We're going to be rich in salt.
Palm tree Christmas, I'm fine with it.
And just want to thank everybody's the city staff service for the year. I think we're doing very well as a team, and I really look forward to doing some pretty great things in 2016. Onward and upward.
Excellent. And I'll also say, since this is our last meeting before before Christmas, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah. Today was the last day of Hanukkah. The group Jewish Ferndale put on a wonderful menorah lighting ceremony last night. I really appreciate that. And they tell me that they're close to having their own facility soon. Maybe at the first of the year they'll be able to announce that. So a wonderful organization that's doing some great stuff in town. Happy Kwanzaa and Happy New Year's to everyone. I want to, because not just because Sharon's still sitting here, but I do want to give a shout out to the Ferndale Community Concert Band. I knew they were good. Sharon told me they were good, but seriously, they are amazingly good. These aren't amateurs. These are people that are really, really talented, and they're going to do another concert in the spring. And so if you were unfortunate enough not to see them on Sunday, make sure you mark your calendars for the spring when they do their next concert, because they were absolutely amazing. I too want to thank my colleagues for another wonderful year, a productive year. We've accomplished a lot, and again, my elected and my unelected colleagues, our staff, which does such a great job. And Raylon, we're looking forward to working with you up here, taking this seat in January. So rest up. We got a lot of work for you. And with that, happy holidays, and meeting is adjourned.